popular idol Duna shone brightly on stage, adored by millions, but offstage she lived in a vacuum of fear. Every gram of weight gained brought a lecture. Every public appearance brought the leering eyes of predatory men. Her own teammates were her sharpest critics, whispering insults in the dressing rooms while rumors of plagiarism began to eat away at her reputation. She begged her manager for a reprieve, but to the company she was a malfunctioning ATM, not a human being. At her final concert, the lights felt like a firing squad. Breathless and broken, Duna jumped off the stage, not into the arms of fans, but into a self-imposed exile. She vanished into a tiny apartment, a ghost haunting her own life, until a clumsy college student named Won-jun moved into the unit next door. He tried to offer a kind greeting, but she saw only a threat. As he opened his door, her blood ran cold. Hanging in his room was her own fan merchandise. Was he a neighbor, or was he the stalker who would finally push her over the edge? Won-jun had no idea he was living next to a fallen legend. He only saw a girl who looked like she was drowning in her own sadness. When Duna finally confronted him, she didn't use words. She blew cigarette smoke in his face, her eyes burning with a mix of defiance and terror. She was convinced his kindness was a mask for an obsession. Won-jun, desperate to prove his innocence, promised never to look her way again. He retreated into his own life, focused on a high-stakes tutoring interview and his longtime crush, Jinju. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. Returning home one snowy night, he found Duna sitting by the door in nothing but thin slippers, her body shaking with violent sobs. Before he could even ask if she was okay, she stood up, threatened to smash his head if he kept singing in his room, and then collapsed into his arms. As he felt her cold, limp weight against his chest, he realized he was now the only person in the world who knew she was dying inside. But would helping her cost him the normal life he worked so hard to build? Duna woke up in the hospital to find Won-jun still there. He didn't ask for an autograph, he bought her socks. He treated her like a person, not a product. This kindness was a foreign language to her, and she found herself drawn to his mundane, hard-working world. She began waiting for him at the door every day, begging him to eat breakfast with her, a fallen star orbiting a commoner. But her presence was a poison. Because of the smoke she had blown on him, Won-jun's clothes reeked at his interview, costing him the job he desperately needed for tuition. When he finally exploded, telling her that he was an ordinary guy who couldn't afford her free-spirited games, Duna retreated into a silence that felt heavier than her anger. He felt a pang of guilt and went to apologize, but as she stepped into his classroom the next day, the entire university stopped to stare. The secret was out. A goddess was walking among the commoners, and she was looking directly at him. Life at the apartment became a delicate dance between three people: the idol, the student, and the crush. Jinju, the girl Won-jun had loved since high school, was back in the picture, and the jealousy began to simmer. During a department party, a senior tried to humiliate Duna, and Won-jun didn't hesitate. He blocked a flying bottle with his own body to protect her. Later that night, under the haze of alcohol and moonlight on the rooftop, the air between Won-jun and Duna changed. She leaned in, her breath hitching, her lips inches from his. He closed his eyes, bracing for a kiss that would change everything, but she pulled back at the last second with a haunting laugh. She told him she was selfish, that she spoke without thinking, and that he should stay away. But as he watched her walk away, he realized a hard choice wasn't hers to make yet, it was his. Would he chase the stable, long-term love of Jinju, or dive into the beautiful, chaotic fire that was Duna? The tension broke when Duna confessed she could no longer sing. The stage that gave her life had taken her voice, leaving her a hollow shell. Won-jun tried to teach her to live again, taking her to play arcade games and basketball, letting her scream and laugh like the teenager she never got to be. But the world wouldn't let her go. A stalker from a nearby shop began filming them, and the photos hit the internet like a tidal wave. The comments were vitriolic, calling her a fallen star dragging a nobody down with her. To protect her, Won-jun confronted the stalker, but the reality was setting in. Their worlds were moving in opposite directions. Duna's company was circling like sharks, offering her a way back to the top, a chance to regain her glory and pay off her family's crushing debts. But the contract had one unspoken condition: Won-jun had to disappear. As they sat together watching a meteor shower, Duna asked him what he wanted for his future. He said an ordinary life, but as she looked at her phone and saw the missed calls from her manager, she knew their ordinary life was a ticking bomb. The final ultimatum came from Manager Park, the man who discovered Duna and then abandoned her when she broke. He offered her the world, the stage, the fans, the money to save her mother. But the price was 3 billion won in breach of contract fees if she stayed with Won-jun. She tried to hide the pain, but Won-jun saw the sleeping pills on her nightstand and the manager's car idling outside their building. He realized by holding her hand he was anchoring a bird that was meant to fly. He watched her perform one last time at a small event, seeing the way her eyes lit up under the spotlight, a light he could never provide in his small apartment. With a heart full of agony, he made the choice for both of them. He told her he was going to the military, that he didn't love her anymore, and that she should go back to where she belonged. Duna screamed, calling him a coward, a traitor, just like everyone else. But as the subway doors closed between them, separating the idol from the commoner, the real question remained: in 4 years, when the lights dim and the applause fades, will there be anything left of the two people who once held hands in the dark? If this story of fame, sacrifice, and forbidden love touched your heart, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a chapter. Drop a comment, Team Duna or Team Jinju, below to let me know who you think Won-jun truly belongs with. Don't forget to like and share this video. Every share helps us bring more of these incredible stories to life. What would you choose, the love of your life or the dream of a lifetime? 4 years had passed like a slow-motion blur. Duna was no longer just an idol, she was an icon, her face plastered on every skyscraper in Seoul, her voice the heartbeat of the nation. Won-jun had traded his hoodies for the stiff collar of a civil servant, living a life of quiet schedules and gray offices. They had crossed paths once in a crowded station, a fleeting moment where the air turned to ice, but they spoke like strangers. He looked at her not as the girl who cried in his lap, but as a masterpiece behind a velvet rope. He thought he had successfully buried the memory of her touch under layers of duty and discipline. He thought the hard choice was finally behind them. He was wrong. One rainy evening, Won-jun found a plain, unmarked envelope tucked into his mailbox. Inside was no letter, only a pair of cheap street stall rings and a single handwritten address to a private clinic on the outskirts of the city. When he arrived, the glamour of the top idol was nowhere to be found. Duna sat in a dim room, her signature stage outfits replaced by a hospital gown, looking smaller than the day they first met. She looked at him with eyes that had seen the top of the mountain and found it freezing. "I did what you asked," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I became the best. I gave them everything. But now the company is moving on to someone younger, someone new. They're discarding me, Won-jun, and I have nowhere left to fall." The world still saw her as a goddess, but behind the scenes, the contract that made her a star was now a cage that was slowly crushing her. Manager Park had moved on to a new protege, and Duna was being forced into a retirement that felt more like a disappearance. She had the fame, but she was penniless. She had the fans, but she was utterly alone. She reached out and grabbed Won-jun's sleeve, the same way she had years ago in the apartment hallway. "I'm making one last choice," she said, her grip tightening until her knuckles turned white. "But this time I'm choosing for me. Will you help me disappear for real this time?" Won-jun looked at the rings in his hand, the symbols of a love he tried to kill, and then at the door where the flashing lights of the paparazzi were already beginning to gather in the distance. To help her now wouldn't just be a scandal, it would be professional suicide for a government official. He would lose his job, his reputation, and the ordinary life he had bled for. The cycle was repeating, the stakes were higher, and the clock was ticking. As the first camera flash hit the window, Won-jun realized the hardest choice wasn't leaving her 4 years ago, it was whether or not to burn his entire world down to save her today. The stage is set, the lights are fading, and the ultimate sacrifice is about to be made. Is love enough to survive the crash of a falling star? You won't want to miss the shocking conclusion in our next episode. Subscribe right now and hit that bell icon so you're the first to know when the finale drops. Drop a comment below. Should Won-jun risk his career to save Duna, or is it too late for a second chance? Like and share if you're rooting for a happy ending.